Easy peasy lemon squeezy, said no one ever when they got done with their VO2 max intervals. Let's talk all things VO2 today. Hey, Coach Lee here, certified nutritionist and licensed cycling coach, wanting to help you take your game up a notch. If you're interested in either nutritional work or coaching, reach out to me. I am here 24/7. This is my full-time job. You heard that correct. I am a full-time nutritionist and coach. So we're going to talk about all things VO2. Had a great working with an athlete who is just a fantastic athlete. He's been with me for several seasons now, and he's in his build period, getting ready for his A event of the spring. And so, of course, we're throwing at him a lot of intensity right now. So let's jump in. Let's look at a workout that he just did and talk about all things VO2 max. So basically, here's the workout, 6x3 at VO2. The whole entire the workout was an hour and 30 minutes. He had an RPE of 10, total 23 miles, total 83 TSS, and, average watts 168, intensity factor 175. And that's what's we're looking at some of this data. He goes out and kills himself. He only gets in 23 miles. He goes out and kills himself. He only gets 83 TSS, right? So this is one of those things that when you're in your build period, it's kind of counterintuitive, but your CTL or your fitness in Training Peaks often goes down. Your volume, how many miles that you're getting every week, often drops. For some athletes who are new to this periodization or this type of periodization through the season, this can be kind of off-putting, but it's how champions are made. Now let's look at some things that we can do for these next few minutes that we have together. Whenever I talk about VO2 max intervals, I talk about, basically four big things. Okay. And so when it comes to VO2 max intervals, I'm not trying to hit the bullseye, with my athletes. We're not trying to hit the bullseye. We are just trying to hit the dartboard. And so there's kind of four big picture things that I like to look at with athletes. One, have a great base period. If you want your best VO2 max intervals ever, have a great base period. A 4-month progressive build where, say, every 14, 15 workouts, you are doing VO2 work. But remember, when you're just out there doing zone 2, zone 3 efforts, you are greatly influencing your VO2. VO2 is so many components. It is a measurement of your maximum oxygen uptake. But to get that maximum oxygen uptake, you have to have neuromuscular capability. Your heart has to be able to pump. And you have to be able to use energy. You have to be able to grab the energy, and you have to be able to put that energy in. Those three big areas are what we're training through the base period. So if you got someone from the couch and you just want them to do a bunch of VO2 intervals, they're going to have a score. But if you give them 4 months to build up and then have them do VO2 intervals, their VO2 will be much higher because the rest of their body is able to support them in that VO2 effort. So nail a great base period. I've seen this so many times before where I'll have athletes who are doing tons of VO2 work. They come to me, we do a 4-month base period, we jump back into some VO2 max intervals, and boom, their VO2, the numbers that they're able to sustain and hit are their all-time biggest. So that's so crucial. Have a great VO2 max. Have a great base period. I'm not a fan of just, if you want your greatest VO2 max ever, well, why not then just do VO2 all year long? 3 times a week, just do VO2. Well, you just develop too much fatigue and you destroy the body both physically and mentally, because it's a mental challenge to do these near max efforts. Route selection. So this is crucial. I love a hill. If you had a hill out there that's 3 to 5 minutes long and 8% gradient, that is awesome. You nail the hill, come back down, relax, just relax, do it again. I have in my area, I have this 6 minute, 8 to 10% hill, and that's where I go do my VO2 on. I really love it. It's about hitting certain numbers at that maximum oxygen uptake level. Start your first one conservatively, okay? So that's one of my biggest things. Start that first one a little conservatively. So if you're going to, your VO2 max is, somewhere between 30 watts wise, is somewhere between 30 and 3050. Well, that first one, nail 330 watts. Just relax. And then next one, maybe tick it up 332 and try to build it up over time. Remember, the VO2, the workout itself is important for many reasons. We're trying to, emphasize and create more ability to, for your maximum uptake, but we also want to use this workout for resiliency, right? We want to hammer you. We want to hammer you again. We want to hammer you again. If you just blow yourself up on the first one and die 1,000 deaths for your next intervals, that's not a very productive workout. You can be more productive if you flip it. If you have your first interval, the most conservative, and then your last interval as your strongest, or your next to last interval as your absolute strongest, then that's building resiliency. That's using the workout. That's using your time out there to be most productive as possible. Then lastly, monitor your parasympathetic tone. What is your parasympathetic tone? How elitist does that sound? Well, we'll talk all about it. It's actually a pretty cool metric that we can talk about. Okay, so I always jump in athlete comments. I'm relieved that it was only 6 intervals today. I was not able to do any better as my legs are heavy, tight, and tired. Anyway, hard work comes with reward as I'm going to Orioles home opener today. It should be fun. So first, I love this comment on so many areas, right? So so basically the plan for the workout was 6x3, and that's what he can do, and that's what he did. But remember, this all is context. VO2 intervals are context. They just don't come out of anywhere. This is his second, this is his 1, 2, 3, 4. This is his 5th week of build, okay? He's nailed his base period. He did a round of, in his first month of build, he did a round of FTP intervals, and now he's doing 3 weeks of dedicated VO2 intervals to get him ready for his A event. That context is king. And this was his 2nd round of intervals this week. That context is king. He's 62 years old. That context is king. And so when I'm designing VO2 intervals, I'm keeping all this context in mind. His ability to recover from these massive amounts of effort. We're not trying to drive him into a ditch. We're trying to, through the base period, we built him a big shovel. Now we're trying to dig a little bit. We're not trying to dig too deep. We're just trying to get everything right. And I believe that this athlete is nailing it, and the plan that he's on is nailing it. And I love this comment that he's going to Orioles. And so, after these comments, he beat himself to death out there during this workout. Those comments that he's in a good mood, he's going to the Orioles game, felt like sharing that with me. I like that. That gives me a good picture in my mind of his mental state. And believe me, when you do some of these VO2 intervals, you can go into a pretty dark place, which is not what I want. So great comments from this particular athlete. He had a great route selection. So you see this gray line, he's just going back and forth up and down the road. And this is the section that he did the VO2 intervals. He found a great climb to nail those VO2 max intervals. So that is perfect. Gets a warm up, does his intervals, then goes back out and does a whole bunch more work. So absolutely perfect in terms of route selection. That is key, right? Your route selection is key. If you don't have a good route, then you're not going to get the type of watts that you need. Here's the workout itself. You can see the intervals. We're seeing some dips here. let's look at this. This is the DFRC chart. That blue line is a great representation of the work that you're doing above threshold. So when you start going above threshold, you're accessing different energy systems, and we like to just to throw them all into one called your battery. So you're accessing the battery. So when you go do work above threshold, that blue line starts to tick down, and it's a pretty good it gives me a really quick visual understanding of what type of work the athlete did. And so this first one, right, he nails it. He digs deep, has a little blip, lets off, right. This next one's a little harder, right. The third one, very hard, goes out, potentially too hard, relaxes, does a big dig at the end. Then the same thing with this third one, and then the fourth one, and then the fifth one, he's recovering very nicely, and then this sixth one, he's recovering well. Now, these are hard to do outside, even if you have a perfect climb. I'm in these mountains. I have just the absolute perfect climb to do these on. He does this particular little segment that he's not is not. It's 98% perfect. Maybe not, that missing about 2%. Now, these are really easy to do on the trainer, and these are actually great to do on the trainer. So here's a trainer work, it's the same thing, and you can see how clean all these are because this athlete is just sitting on the trainer, nailing all the work. And so if we could compare this outdoors, we can definitely see the difference, but we want this trend. Boom, boom. Kind of miss it right here. Nails it here, nails it here, nails it here. We want to end up lower for these deep sections throughout. So the athlete did a great job. And remember, all of his events are outdoors, so he needs to learn to drop these bombs outdoors. And that's an aspect of neuromuscular manipulation. That's what I mean. Like, your muscles, your legs have to be able to support your cardiovascular system. They have to be able to support your maximum oxygen uptake. And so there's if you have the base period with me, then there's tons of neuromuscular manipulation, tons of cadence development in those first 4 months to be able to support you for your outdoor efforts, for your events, for these massive efforts. And this work, again, this is his second round of VO2 intervals this week. I'm just very happy with this particular athlete and what he did. So if we look at his intervals, again, I really like for athletes to start off conservatively. So here, he's at the bottom of his VO2, 304. Again, he's 62 years old. And right here, he's at 304, takes the next one, 308, 314. Has a problem with that last one, 308, but drives it home for that last work. So great job. And, having a strategy and just trying to uptick the watts. Again, this is all about building resiliency. It's doing the work. It's making sure that you can do this work, that you can have the repeatability necessary to win the race. Okay, so this is very important for this type of work. Another thing that I like to look at is that parasympathetic tone. Remember, this work, that we're doing, we want to look at, not only the watts, but we want to look at the actual strain on the cardiovascular system. How do we do that? We look at the heart rate. So there's a great concept called parasympathetic tone in that, we look at the end of the interval and we look at that first minute after the interval. Okay. So he goes out and does his interval. His heart rate goes up to, 150. Max. And so then we want to look at how far his heart rate goes down in that first minute, how far it recovers. Okay. So the parasympathetic system, that's your rest and digest system, your nervous system. And then you have the sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight. So for the intervals themselves, you're in that sympathetic system, but we train all through base period. We train all throughout the year of, that being able to switch from your sympathetic to your parasympathetic. And so we want to see how far that goes down with that concept called parasympathetic tone. So if we're looking at these, the gray is his elevation. This red is his heart rate. Here we have 1 minute, and here we have 1 minute. So let's compare this first one with this last one. And we have his first interval, which he did at 305 watts. We had 146, but we really have that heart rate recovers. In that first minute, look how far that drops, 119. Beautiful work. At that last interval, his max is 155, and the minute afterwards it drops only to 149. And we see this trend throughout the interval progression, and that he has a great parasympathetic tone for his first one, and then it slightly reduces throughout the workout. Again, this is what we want. We want to dig you. We want to push you to your limits. But for this workout, the workout goal is not to bury yourself into a dark black hole. The purpose of this workout is to push yourself, not to fail, because we have a lot more work to do this week, but just push yourself as far as you can before breaking. And if we look again at this last one, there's essentially, 155, 1 minute. We did the perfect amount of intervals for this particular athlete on this day. To do a seventh one would just drive him into despair, the black hole. That's not what we're trying to do. We're not trying to drive massive amounts of fatigue in this. We're trying to give him the right dose. And so for this particular workout, given his heart rate, given his watts, given his comments, given his RPE of 10, I think we nailed, 6. And that is the big question, is how many intervals do you want to give somebody? How many VO2 intervals? Do you want to give 3 by 5? How many do you want to give? What do you want to progress up to? So every week we progress. What do you want to progress up to? So now when I'm designing his next week, because I design weeks week to week, I'm going to look at this data, and then it's going to help inform me and him on how to design his last round of VO2 intervals before we go into his A event. Now, coach comments, first, after this type of workout, we want to switch into that parasympathetic mode as fast as possible. So basically, as always, as soon as he gets off that bike, he wants to hydrate. Then he wants to really calm down and make sure that his body is switched over to the rest and digest phase for recovery and repair, which we call the parasympathetic nervous system. Great route selection. I said it before. He did a great job with that route selection. He wanted to nail this, and he nailed it. Now, for the rest of this week, he has 2 major brutal workouts already this week. So now for the rest of this week, his Saturday and Sunday ride, I'm just going to have him go out and do volume, go out and do a few hours on Saturday, go out and do a few hours on Sunday. I do know that this athlete is going to do a very hard group ride on Sunday. So I'm hoping that he'll taper that down and just sit on the back, sit on the wheels, and just relax and just have a great time on his big ride on Sunday. Now, one of the things that this workout showed me is that this athlete is very tenacious. So when we give VO2 intervals, we're not just trying to maximize your oxygen uptake. We are trying to maximize your mental uptake, right? How much pain, how much suffering that you can do, because these are hard, especially the first one's hard, but then the second one, you get it. The third one, you get it. The fourth one is a little harder. The fifth one, the fifth one. And then the sixth one, right? It's hard. And so this particular athlete, and this shows itself in its data throughout the entire year, throughout everything, he is mentally strong, and I can see it in the data. I can honestly say I am not as mentally strong as this particular athlete. He is, just an absolute beast when it comes to the mental aspect of this and the suffering aspect of it. And so, yeah, he can rock it out. Hope that makes sense. If you have any question about nailing your best VO2 max intervals, reach out to me. Again, I am here, www.sanstead.com. Would love to talk all things VO2 max. Thanks, everybody.